Koinant, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And yes, it's clear that the government is now panicking over the unemployment issue resulting from this enforced lockdown and the extension of the lockdown period. The government is putting together an emergency plan to kickstart South Africa's economy after the lockdown in a bid to stave off a jobs bloodbath that economists fear could take unemployment to more than 50%. Think about it, more than 50%. And the National Command Council, chaired by President Cyril Ramaphosa, is tomorrow expected to discuss proposals from some industries to ease certain restrictions during the lockdown too. Well, as I've said so many times now, why bother with the lockdown? It's certainly not working in the most populated areas like the townships and the other areas that people gather. It's just crazy. And of course taxis. Among them are lobbies from the tobacco and alcohol sectors, as well as a call to allow fast food outlets to reopen. The results of these discussions are expected to be taken to the Cabinet later in the week, where a raft of proposals that include a comprehensive financial package geared at scaling up the production of essential goods will be tabled. Also on the agenda will be a radical proposal to cut non-core sections from the school curriculum in a bid to relieve pressure on pupils who will miss at least 2 months of school this year. It has been learnt from well-placed sources that the government is likely to focus on the production of items for which high demand is expected, specifically in the medical and pharmaceutical industries, and those that produce protective gear and ventilators. The plan has been driven by the Department of Trade and Industry. Minister in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu, said Ramaphosa has ordered all cabinet cluster committees to come with their recovery plans. The work of the National Command Council is the containment of the virus. Well, they're never going to achieve that. I mean, they've lost the plot. Anyway, they say, we will also start discussion that will feed into Cabinet about what do we do so that there is economic recovery. The President has said, all of us as clusters, how do we rebuild and come up with a recovery plan? How do we ensure that our people remain employed after the lockdown? And how do we bring hope to our people that we're on the way to recovery? We have all been instructed to come up with that plan. Ramaphosa announced on Thursday night that the lockdown will be extended to the end of April, but life after lockdown is likely to see strict regulations remaining in place for the better part of at least a year. A massive hemorrhaging of jobs cannot be avoided, but there is hope that repurposing certain industries will create new jobs and retain some old ones. Engineering-intense firms such as motor vehicle manufacturers will start to produce ventilators if the state can pull off a proposed complete redesign of the economy with a renewed focus on industrialization. Well, they couldn't organize a kitchen party, so good luck with that. Really, I mean, what a joke. That's the ANC government for you. Other proposals up for discussion include ways in which to support and restructure the informal sector and the self-employed. A government insider said one of the challenges will be to identify those who were active traders in the informal sector before the COVID-19 crisis, given the almost non-existent paper trail in most cases. Get that? No paper trail when it comes to COVID-19. Where have we heard that before? Oh, that's right. Municipalities and their financial affairs. No paper trail. Not good with paper are these BEE candidates. Not good at all. Already the Unemployment Insurance Fund has seen a massive take-up from companies to assist with paying salaries in workplaces that have closed. About 50,000 applications have been processed, with 20,000 having been paid out and the remaining payments to be made this week. The first major hurdle likely to be discussed by the Cabinet this week is the reallocation of the budget presented by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni just 2 months ago in order to accommodate the economic package that will soon be adopted. It is understood that current projections have COVID-19 peaking in mid-May, meaning that strict regulations prohibiting movement will have to remain in place at least until then. This could mean the social distancing and the wearing of masks would have to continue. Limits on the number of passengers in public transport vehicles would also continue. Other short-term interventions by the government are yielding results. The Solidarity Fund has raised more than 2 billion rand, including donations from 3,000 ordinary South Africans. Fund CEO Nomkita Nkwameni said they were humbly overwhelmed. She said the Solidarity Fund was a catalyst in ensuring a rapid response to the pandemic, beginning with bolstering public health care and also focusing on humanitarian efforts. Now I got a message earlier this evening from Patrick from Farmers Aid South Africa, and he wrote to me saying, I heard that Samco is now opening a case against the officials, as they say they now have proof that food parcels were given to their friends, families and political associations. Why does that not just seem par for the course in South Africa? You know, really, it is. It's just par for the course. But let's continue. Ramaphosa said on Thursday night that he and all members of the executive will donate a third of their salary for 3 months to the Solidarity Fund. Oh, wacky-do. The EFF followed suit, saying all of its public representatives will donate a third of their salaries to the fund. Well, Ramaphosa, as a billionaire and beneficiary of black privilege through BBBEE, should be donating at least R1 billion towards the Solidarity Fund. But of course he won't. Of course he won't. Anyway, let's continue. The action by the politicians led to a series of other pledges from politicians, both in office and in the opposition, to donate their salaries. Nkwani said they were collaborating with various foundations, such as the Motsepe Foundation, the Naspers Fund, and other organizations. And several of those funds are, guess what? BBBEE compliant, so you've got to have 51% black ownership. This is where the racial divide is so apparent in South Africa, even when it comes to funding businesses impacted by the lockdown. It's absolutely crazy. From April the 4th to April the 14th, 6.7 million surgical masks and 1 million test kits, 1.2 million N95 masks and 20,000 face shields and 1 million gloves had arrived in South Africa. About 200 ventilators have also been procured. Spokesperson for the Department of Small Business Development, Priscilla Monama, told the paper that pleas for support had been overwhelming. By Tuesday, April the 7th, over 100,000 SMMEs had registered online to express their need for assistance, she said. But of course, if you're not 51% black owned, go to the back of the queue. Simples. Economic efforts have extended to the government's alliance partners. COSATU spokesperson Matthew Parks, who is also the Labour coordinator at the National Economic Development and Labour Council, said, "We have been having almost daily Zoom meetings at NEDLAC to look at economic measures to cushion business and workers. COSATU is engaged with all its affiliates on what are the sectors or workplaces that could be allowed to start functioning again under stringent health and safety conditions. However, COSATU's biggest concern is the UIF. Though 40 billion rand has been set aside for COVID-19 relief to be dispersed via the UIF, it fears the shutdown will end without the funds reaching workers. The UIF was not built to manage an economic meltdown, and there is a serious capacity logjam," said Parks. Labour wants the South African Revenue Service and banks to be considered as alternatives to the UIF to get the money dispersed. Well, there's probably a better chance of it actually reaching where it's supposed to go as well, that way. Anyway, Despite media reports this week that 60 to 70% of the mine labour force will go back to work next week, Alan Fine for the Minerals Council South Africa yesterday denied this, saying a date when miners would return to work would be informed by the state after the lockdown. Our approach to dealing with COVID-19 before the lockdown was risk-based, and it will continue to be so, Fine said. He said the council has developed a standard operating procedure for those mines returning to production. Alan Mkuki, chair of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, called on the government to ease restrictions of the fast food industry. He told the paper yesterday it would be an informative test case. We can go headlong into opening businesses, and the fast food sector is the easiest to reopen quickly. He said they are related to the food industry as essential services. The value chains are very similar, and the producers who support Pick and Pay are the same ones who service fast food restaurants. The government will also have to come up with a way to keep the poor fed. Now, that's the kicker. I'm hearing from Patrick that there are desperate pleas from white communities all over South Africa to him because they are starving. Starving. He talks about one family which they don't have food and they're drinking rooibos tea just to keep their stomachs full. Can you believe it? This is the reality of what's going on in the white community in South Africa. Anyway, she said since the lockdown, child hunger rates have spiked. With the extension, 55,000 Libyan child-headed households are at risk of starvation, especially as school feeding programs are not operating. To avert disaster, government must urgently resolve food distribution network problems, with the lack of coordination at provincial levels causing delay in getting food to communities. As I said earlier, they couldn't organise a kitchen party. Christo van der Riede, Agri South Africa's deputy president, said a national food hamper strategy must be rolled out, which sees retailers, NGOs and the religious and farming community using their networks to distribute food to those urgently in need. He warned that if this doesn't happen, the lives of many of the country's vulnerable will be endangered. Economic expert Mike Schuessler said the extended lockdown will kill the economy, pushing unemployment levels past 50%. We cannot continue at less than 50% of normal activity. Government does not have enough money to help. He said South Africa would become the first country in the world with more unemployed than employed people in the labour force. The tax base will be wiped out. Government will have to cut salaries and grants and will not be able to build schools. Economist Dr. Tabi Laoka said the extended lockdowns will push South Africa into a deep recession. I would suggest a depression, with the country potentially having lost up to 200 billion rand in the past 2 weeks. He said tourism, mining and manufacturing may not recover quickly. The retail and vehicle sector will struggle due to demand reduction. Small and informal businesses are the most impacted, and many may never recover. Wits University health economist Alex van der Heerwe said South Africa doesn't have the economic resistance for an extended lockdown. He said, based on economic formulas, the GDP for the full lockdown, which we are currently in, will lose nearly 370 billion rand. For the country to survive, the lockdown must be downgraded. This must, however, be done with strict health regulations in place, which allow major industries to operate while protecting workers' lives, with mass testing and hotspot areas quarantined. He said mass screening and testing must be scaled up even more, with the infected and their contacts immediately traced, isolated and quarantined. Professor Shabir Mahdi, an infectious diseases expert at Wits University, said what happens after the lockdown will be determined by what happens over the next 3 weeks in terms of testing, tracing and isolation. He said as soon as you lift the lockdown, you get a rebound, adding that South Africa did not have enough testing in the early part of the lockdown. He went on to say, In terms of reducing transmission, you have to identify cases in households and then put them into isolation and quarantine their contacts. Otherwise, those in the house spread the virus to others at a rapid rate and then go out and spread the virus back into the community. With us not having done early identification during the course of the first lockdown, we risk this rebound. Well, I have to say no more than the townships. That's where it's going to just explode. This whole lockdown has been a complete and utter farce. City economist Gina Schumann said that adding another 2 weeks of lockdown means a contraction in the economy of 7.5 to 8%. Unfortunately, the impact is not linear, and the longer it persists, the more intense the impact, she said. So there you go, guys. That's the bad news about the lockdown. Yep, the South African economy is in crisis mode. Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the update. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe. Bye for now.